Hello everyone, my name is Nives and I'm the mother of 2 girls, and I've recently given up on the corporate grind to stay at home and homeschool my children. Today I wanted to do a little bit of a different video for you. So I'm taking you to my kitchen while I clean up and I make extremely simple buns, for which I'll leave the recipe below. And I wanted to talk about something that has been on my mind a lot this past year. Some of the ideas on womanhood and motherhood that are prevalent in modern feminism, a train of thought I believed until quite recently. So I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea and listen in. And if you have any thoughts, please leave them below. I am part of the generation of women who was raised under the ideals of modern feminism. Modern feminism transcends the unarguable premise that women are persons and so need and have right to the same rights as men in our society: the right to vote, the right to work, the right to bring in an income, and so on. But modern feminism takes that basic premise many steps further, and I'll go as far as to say that it isn't serving women well. We are entrapped by this idea of what it means to be a career woman, a boss girl, a woman pushing her way through the world of man. And we applaud those who trade off their femininity for dress pants and blazers, and look down upon those who trade those dress pants and blazers for aprons, and who replace the priorities of a corporation by the priorities of their own families. Modern feminism has led us women in a direction that is so foreign to our intrinsic wishes that we have to explain ourselves and justify why we feel the need to stay close to our babies. Once I heard the story of a woman who was in a meeting when her water broke, and how on the way to the hospital, she dialed into that meeting again. It was a story meant to tell us about how, as women, motherhood doesn't take away from our productivity, and that we're just as capable and as present as men despite, quote-unquote, what we consider biological barriers. It was the story of corporate pride, just how hardworking this woman is. Her motherhood does not take away from her ability to deliver, literally and figuratively. Her work remains a priority. To most of us, this seems extreme, yet that is the modern world that has been built for us women. We applaud the mother who has spent her children's early years obtaining a degree, as if motherhood in itself is not enough, as if it needed to be complemented with further ventures. Modern feminism brings the urge to constantly deny ourselves from our femininity and our natural drives and aim for what the world tells us makes us worthy. It's an idea that I embraced as a young woman, and I believe it has been a detriment to my womanhood, my personal contentment, and how I perceived my role in this world. In modern feminism, there's this idea that women can have it all. It's so widely accepted that we can be mothers as well as climb that corporate ladder, that we can love our children and burn ourselves out at the detriment of our own relationships with our children, our husband, and family, working for other men as they get rich. And while I think that as women we are responsible for making a contribution in this world and pursuing passions and showing the best of ourselves, I don't necessarily think it needs to be in the way that we have designed the corporate world to be and the women's place in that corporate world. To make this idea of having it all happen, we outsource our responsibilities. We outsource the raising of our babies to daycares or bring in nannies if we can afford it. We outsource the feeding of our family by subscribing to meal delivery services because it's easier than cooking meals from scratch. We outsource the maintenance of our home by hiring cleaners. We outsource our children's education by putting them in government-run systems that weren't created with them in mind, but by how they can best mold our children into what utility they will want out of them in this society. And this is the normal path for us, and anything outside this path for a woman is deemed radical, regressive, or a stab at feminism. But we have been lied to and conditioned to believe that this is what our time on this planet is meant to look like, when in fact we are slaves to the political, the social, and corporate systems surrounding us. Instead of serving our family and God, this is who we choose to serve. But it's an idea that serves the worldly systems of corporatism, capitalism, and even communism. It doesn't serve us women. It doesn't serve men well either. It doesn't serve our families or our well-being. And in the process of living up to this idea of modern feminism, of what womanhood is supposed to be, we sacrifice so much of the meaningful stuff. It is widely accepted to serve corporations and organizations and looked down upon to serve our families and homes. This is why we are seeing so many women, including myself, turning to God rather than the world for guidance. And in doing so, we find the place we are meant to be, the place filled with people we love that we can take care of and nurture. The place that makes us feel at peace and that brings out our natural talents. For a lot of us, this place is our home. I remember when I was a young woman feeling sorry for stay-at-home mothers, as if they needed saving to realize their true potential, how much they were losing themselves in serving others. And yet, in homeschooling my children, I have surrounded myself with mothers like me who are realizing our true potential. Mothers who come from that modern world and who realize they were duped by the modern feminism ideas. Mothers who are well-educated, well-traveled, and quite frankly attached to the corporations who'd seek to make them into model employees. Mothers who have worked a number of positions across the corporate world and who decided that their children and their families needed them the most. It can feel like a sacrifice on the part of the woman. And in part it is, because in order to gain something, you must lose something. In every single choice we make, including this one, we trade off a thing for another. In my case, I needed to understand that a job title, a corporate role, or making an income off of hard work doesn't make me more worthy as a woman. I needed to let go of being at par with my husband in terms of the finances I brought into our home. I needed to let go of the pride of losing or gaining a corporate status. I needed to let go of the boss lady mentality. I needed to see worth in myself that transcends these worldly labels and to find the courage within me to know I am more than a job title or an income. This was a transition I had to go through, especially when it came to raising my daughters. There is so much unlearning taking place in transitions, like going from being a working mother to being a stay-at-home mother. You see, I often saw my career as an example to my daughters, showing them what it means to be a hardworking, serious woman who can compete in the world of men, as if it meant to inspire them that they can truly be who they want to be. But is there not better examples for me to set for them than that of corporate fulfillment? The example of a hardworking career mom is often how we hope to portray things when a mother feels guilt for spending more time at work than at home with our families. We tell ourselves and each other that one day our children will be old enough to understand and to look up to their mother. Or we gaslight the woman into wondering why the man doesn't feel such guilt. Notice that I'm not saying a woman should stay at home, but there's a reason why a lot of women feel guilt and why we feel divided in what we wish we could do and what our reality is. It's because deep down, whether we want to admit it or not, we want to be near our children. We have the need and the drive to be the nurturer to our children, to raise and educate them, to not miss out on our time with them. Yet we push that drive away to conform to the idea that modern feminism has programmed us with, that motherhood alone doesn't suffice. And so we continue this play we're part of, dividing ourselves in many directions, trying to give all of us in many spheres of our life, but being human only having so much to give. And that's our modern curse. I understand the mother who feels divided and feels like she has no choice. I understand you because I was like that too. The modern world wasn't built around keeping families together. It was built to send us in as many directions as there are family members. Each of us holding our own special 9-to-5 job until we gather at the end of the day for a few scarce, tired hours. And as part of this modern curse, we put the pressure on our husbands and on our marriage to change so that this modern feminism experience becomes more worth it. We demand more out of them. But even when they try, they cannot live up to what our needs are. No matter how much our husbands try to meet us halfway in childcare, in child education, and in chores and errands, we are still left overwhelmed, frazzled, and unsatisfied. because we will never truly be satisfied in the systems we had contributed to building for ourselves. And to clarify, men and women should take pride in their family and their home and should contribute to it through the means of finances, taking care of the home, raising of children, but I don't believe that the 50-50 split we have in mind is working to anyone's advantage. Not our husbands, not our children's, and certainly not our own. I remember in the early years of my first daughter's life, I had joined a new moms group, and every single one of them was complaining about how unfair the division of labor was, how they are the primary parent. And in reading their experiences, I started thinking of my own too. I too was the primary parent. And suddenly, this thing that I took on intrinsically started to feel unfair. And I started becoming frustrated and resentful at my husband. I started voicing out all the quote-unquote unknown load of motherhood, as they call it. And my husband, wanting to meet me halfway, offered to take some of it on. Except I didn't really truly know what I wanted him to take on, and I didn't really want him to take it on. I couldn't let him rock my baby to sleep in the middle of the night, or knowing what day the pajama party at her daycare is, or the booking of her swimming lessons, or her doctor appointments, or to remember to book this or that activity she may need to be registered for. Because as mothers, whether we like to admit it or not, most of us are drawn to be the primary caregiver for our children, and in sorts, the managers and the keepers of our homes. And as women, we often feel like the primary parent, and that is because we often assume and take on that role. We assume that role because it's a role that's natural to us. We women are different from men. Our minds are different, our bodies and physiologies and hormones are different, and we cannot expect ourselves to keep up with man. Our place in this world is not to be equal to men. Men are not our competition. We have a whole other set of interests, of drive, of passion that we bring to the table, and we should capitalize on that rather than adapting ourselves to the world of men. And that doesn't make us weaker. That doesn't make us lesser. That doesn't make men lesser or men weaker. It's not a competition. When I first became a mother and held my tiny girl's helpless newborn body, I fell in love. And when I gave birth to my second daughter, I felt that same all-consuming love. I cried so much through those early days of the baby blues, not because of the sadness, but because through that hormonal surge, I felt such immensity of love and marvel at my newborn and life itself that I couldn't believe it, that I was given this sweet little babe to care for. I was so grateful for my babies. Each time I gave birth to one of my daughters, all I wanted to do was hold her tight as she would sleep her days away on me. I didn't feel overwhelmed by her nursing what seemed like every 10 minutes for over an hour at a time. I didn't feel overwhelmed by her need to be held by me. I didn't feel overwhelmed by how many times she'd wake me up at night, though I do have to admit my body was exhausted to the point of hallucinating. So childbirth and having a newborn is definitely physically taxing on a woman. But I embraced my new role in a way that actually surprised me, and there was nowhere else I would have rather been than laying on that couch with her sweet head resting on my chest. I remember with my firstborn how protective I was of her. I didn't want anyone else to hold her, and I certainly didn't want my husband to wake up in the middle of the night to bottle feed her while I slept through. I didn't want him, nor could I sleep if she was awake. I wanted to nurse her, love her, and care for her. And that intrinsic drive to care for my daughter manifested physically as well. As any woman who has nursed babies will know, those newborn nights are filled with wet puddles of milk. And so even our bodies are calling us to our duty of motherhood. Through the birth of my first child, I was born too. I was born as a mother and as a new self that I was only meeting for the first time. As an atheist, I didn't know what a blessing God had entrusted me with at the time. Yet in an instant, everything changed, and my desires out of this life changed. Timothy 2:15 reads that women are saved in childbearing, and I understand that fully. When God speaks, we must learn to listen. And if we listen close enough, we will hear his voice guiding us towards our path, and whatever that may look like in taking care of our children and of our families. If we listen to him, becoming a mother saves us. It betters us. It brings us closer to our true soul, not the version of it modeled by the guidance of the world. It sanctifies us and with God's grace purifies our soul. And then we might just get the realization that motherhood alone is enough.